The conference room at Naval Special Warfare Command in San Diego was packed with high-ranking officers when Dr. Maya Reeves walked in carrying a worn leather briefcase and a cup of coffee from the base Starbucks. She was 42 years old, dressed in a simple gray pantsuit, her black hair streaked with premature silver and pulled back in a low ponytail. She wore minimal makeup and sensible flats. She looked like exactly what her credentials said she was: a civilian consultant with a doctorate in Middle Eastern studies and counterterrorism strategy. She did not look like someone who belonged in a room full of Navy SEALs, Marine raiders, and Army Special Forces commanders planning a classified operation. Lieutenant Commander Brad Holloway noticed her first. He was standing near the coffee station, chatting with several other SEAL officers before the briefing started. When Maya walked past them to find a seat, he exchanged glances with his colleagues. "Excuse me, ma'am," Brad called out. "I think you might have the wrong conference room. This is a classified briefing, cleared personnel only." Maya looked up from her briefcase. "I'm aware. I'm Dr. Maya Reeves. I'm presenting today." Brad's eyebrows rose. "You're presenting on what exactly?" "Counterterrorism strategy for the operation you're planning in Yemen." She said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance or defensiveness. "Yemen?" Brad looked confused. "Ma'am, I don't know who told you that, but this briefing is classified top secret. We don't discuss operational details with civilian consultants who hold TSSCI clearance and have been specifically requested by SOCOM to provide regional expertise." Maya finished his sentence calmly. She pulled out her credentials and handed them to him. "I have all the appropriate clearances, Commander. Check with the Admiral's staff if you'd like confirmation." Brad examined her credentials, which were indeed legitimate, but he still looked skeptical. "You're a professor." "I teach at Georgetown, yes. I also consult for various government agencies on Middle Eastern affairs and counterterrorism operations." Another SEAL officer joined them, a grizzled master chief with 25 years of experience. "A professor? We're planning a direct action raid, not writing a research paper. No offense, ma'am, but what could you possibly tell us about Yemen that we don't already know?" Maya took a sip of her coffee. "Well, for starters, I could tell you that the compound you're planning to hit is actually a decoy. The high-value target you're after moved to a different location 3 days ago, but we'll get to that in the briefing." The Master Chief's face went red. "How could you possibly know our target?" "Because I've been tracking him for 6 years. I probably know more about his movements, his networks, and his security protocols than anyone in this building." She said it without boasting, just stating a fact. Before the conversation could continue, the door opened, and Admiral Richard Grayson entered the room. He was an imposing figure, a SEAL admiral with multiple combat deployments, and a reputation as one of the toughest commanders in naval special warfare. "Attention," someone called, and everyone in the room snapped to their feet. "As you were," Grayson said, moving to the front of the room. His eyes swept across the assembled officers and stopped when he noticed Maya. A slight frown crossed his face. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his tone not unkind but clearly questioning. "This is a restricted briefing. Can I ask what you're doing here?" Maya stood. "Admiral Grayson, I'm Dr. Maya Reeves. I believe your operations officer arranged for me to present the intelligence brief today." Grayson turned to his operations officer, a Navy captain who quickly spoke up. "Yes, sir. SOCOM sent her. She's the Yemen expert they wanted us to consult before finalizing the operation." The Admiral looked back at Maya with unconcealed skepticism. "A Yemen expert? You're an academic." "I have a PhD, yes, sir. I also have extensive field experience in the region." "Field experience?" Grayson repeated, his tone making clear what he thought of that claim. "What kind of field experience does a professor have? Research trips, interviews with refugees?" Several officers chuckled. Maya noticed but didn't react emotionally. She dealt with this kind of skepticism her entire career. "Various types of field experience, Admiral. We can discuss my qualifications if you'd like, but perhaps we should start the briefing. I understand your timeline is tight." Grayson checked his watch. "Fine, let's get started, but I'm asking SOCOM why they sent us an academic when we requested operational intelligence support." He gestured to the front of the room. "The floor is yours, Doctor." Maya moved to the front and connected her laptop to the projection system. As the screen lit up with a satellite image of a compound in Yemen, she began her presentation. Gentlemen, you're planning to raid this compound in Marib province to capture or kill Ahmed al-Nashiri, a high-value target responsible for multiple attacks on U.S. interests. Your intelligence indicates he's been using this location as his primary safe house for the past 6 months. Heads nodded around the room. That was indeed their target and their intelligence. Your intelligence is outdated, Maya continued calmly. Al-Nashiri abandoned this compound 72 hours ago after receiving warning that American forces were surveilling the location. He's currently at a different compound approximately 40 kilometers northeast. Grayson leaned forward. And you know this how? Because I have assets on the ground who have been tracking al-Nashiri's movements in real time. I also have signal intelligence indicating phone calls between al-Nashiri and his security chief discussing the move. She clicked to the next slide, which showed intercepts of Arabic text messages with English translations. The room had gone quiet. The officers were leaning forward now, paying attention. Maya continued for the next 20 minutes, systematically dismantling their operational plan and presenting an alternative based on current intelligence. She knew the layout of the actual compound where al-Nashiri was hiding. She knew his security protocols, his daily routine, the weapons his guards carried. She knew which of his associates were actually informants who could be leveraged. She presented it all with calm professionalism, using detailed satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and human intelligence reports that were clearly more current than anything the military had. When she finished, the room was silent. Admiral Grayson was staring at her with a completely different expression than before. "Dr. Reeves," he said slowly, "that was comprehensive. Where exactly did you get this intelligence? This level of detail, the real-time tracking, that's not academic research." "No, sir, it's not." "So I'll ask again, what's your background? Who do you work for?" Maya considered how much to reveal. She'd spent years building her cover as a simple academic consultant, but these men needed to trust her intelligence, and trust required some degree of honesty. "I work for Georgetown University, as I said. I also consult for the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, and before that," she paused, "before that I had a different career." "What kind of career?" "I was military, Admiral, Special Operations. I spent 12 years running intelligence networks and direct action missions in the Middle East." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "What branch, what unit?" "That's classified, sir." "I have top-secret clearance, Doctor." "I'm aware, it's still classified above your clearance level." The room erupted in murmurs. The idea that this civilian professor had clearances above a SEAL admiral was stunning. Grayson's face had gone from skeptical to genuinely curious. "All right, I'll bite. What was your rank when you served?" He asked it almost as a joke, probably expecting her to say she'd been an intelligence analyst with a rank of sergeant or lieutenant. Something that would explain her knowledge but keep her safely in the category of support personnel rather than operator. Maya met his eyes directly. "I didn't have a traditional rank, Admiral. I was assigned to a classified unit that doesn't officially exist. My teammates called me Phantom Viper." The effect was instantaneous. Admiral Grayson went pale, actually pale, the color drained from his face. Around the room, the senior special operations officers had similar reactions. Some straightened in their chairs. Others leaned forward with wide eyes. A few exchanged shocked glances. Lieutenant Commander Holloway, who had questioned Meyer at the beginning, actually stood up from his chair. "You're Phantom Viper? The Phantom Viper." Master Chief Williams, the grizzled SEAL who had dismissed her as a professor, put his hand over his mouth. "Holy shit," he whispered. Grayson found his voice, though it was strained. "Phantom Viper is a legend, a ghost story we tell about an operator who doesn't exist, who ran missions that were impossible. Who?" He trailed off, staring at Maya. "You're telling me Phantom Viper is real, and she's you." Maya set down her briefing notes. "The stories are exaggerated, Admiral, but yes, that was my call sign, and I'm very real." "The operation in Damascus," Grayson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The one where someone extracted 3 captured American soldiers from a Syrian intelligence prison. That was in 2009. Everyone said it was impossible, that the story had to be fabricated, but the soldiers came home." "They came home," Maya confirmed quietly. The assassination of the Hezbollah commander in Beirut that looked like a heart attack. The destruction of the Iranian weapons cache that was blamed on an accidental explosion. Grayson stopped himself. Those operations are still classified. Yes, sir, they are. Brad Holloway was shaking his head in disbelief. Phantom Viper was supposedly a CIA Special Activities operator. The best of the best. One person who could slip into denied territory, accomplish impossible missions, and get out without anyone knowing we were there. That's an oversimplification, but essentially accurate, Maya said. Master Chief Williams had recovered enough to ask a question. Ma'am, if you were that operator, why are you now teaching at Georgetown? Why the civilian cover? It's not a cover. I really am a professor. I really did get my PhD. Maya gathered her materials. I retired from operational work 8 years ago after my last mission went sideways. I was burned. My identity was compromised. My network was rolled up. I lost good people, people who trusted me. After that, I couldn't operate in the field anymore, so I pivoted to teaching and consulting. But you still have the intelligence networks, Grayson observed. The assets you mentioned in Yemen, those are your people. Some of them, some I've rebuilt over the years through consulting work. Old relationships, new contacts. I may not run missions anymore, but I still have eyes and ears in places where the U.S. military doesn't. Grayson sat back in his chair, his entire demeanor changed. Dr. Reeves, do you prefer doctor or? Doctor is fine, or Maya. I don't use the call sign anymore. Maya, then, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions based on appearances. That was unprofessional. No apology necessary, Admiral. I prefer to be underestimated. It makes my job easier. I can imagine. Grayson looked at his assembled officers. Gentlemen, I think we need to completely reconsider our operational plan based on Dr. Reeves's intelligence. She clearly has better information than we do. A Army Special Forces colonel spoke up. Ma'am, would you be willing to stay on as a consultant for the entire operation? Not just the planning, but the execution. Maya hesitated. I don't do field work anymore, Colonel. I'm not asking you to go into Yemen. I'm asking you to be in our operations center, providing real-time intelligence support. Your networks, your knowledge of the target, that could mean the difference between success and failure. Or the difference between our guys coming home alive or in body bags, added Master Chief Williams. With respect, ma'am, if Phantom Viper is willing to help us, we'd be idiots to say no. Maya looked around the room. These men who had dismissed her an hour ago were now looking at her with respect, even awe. It was a familiar transformation, one she'd seen many times over the years. But it was also exactly what she'd been trying to avoid. She'd left the operational world for good reasons. The cost had been too high, the losses too painful. I need to think about it, she said finally. Can I give you an answer by tomorrow?